price of filling your car jumps. Your vacation flight is radically more expensive. Your eyes pop when you see your grocery bill. Stock markets start to tumble. Central banks panic about inflation. All because of one factor, the price of oil. We're on a roller coaster ride right now with oil, and it's not the first time we've experienced an oil shock. So, what is an oil shock? An oil shock happens when the price of oil rises rapidly and unexpectedly. Because oil powers transport, manufacturing, and heating, a price shock spreads through the whole economy. Economists call this a negative supply shock. The result is production becomes more expensive. The immediate trigger for this oil price shock is the accelerating crisis in the Middle East since the start of the Iran war, and its devastating impact on global oil supply. The Strait of Hormuz, through which around a quarter of the world's crude supplies flow, is effectively closed. Oil facilities across the region have come under sustained attack, and major producers have been forced to cut output as the conflict deepens. Now, oil doesn't dominate the global economy like it did in the 1970s, but it's still a crucial factor in modern production. We may be about to experience a volatile mix of higher inflation and slower economic growth. Companies can absorb higher costs or pass them on to consumers. In practice, they usually do both. The direct effect of an oil shock means that gasoline and heating fuel become more expensive. Motorists quickly notice the impact at the gas pump. When the price of oil goes up by $10 a barrel, the rough rule of thumb is that the price of gasoline for US drivers could rise by about 25 cents a gallon. In Germany, a $10 increase in oil means an extra 7 euro cents at the pump, roughly. The pass-through is smaller in Germany than in the US because in Germany, more than half the pump price is taxes. Indirectly, almost everything becomes more costly to produce or transport. Shipping rates go up, food prices rise, airline tickets become pricier, products using petrochemicals, plastics, become more expensive. Electricity costs rise.
I think it's going to hit broadly, both households, industries and airlines. Basically because even though most of the crude and oil products are exported or sold to China from the Middle East or to Asia, we will see a more general impact on the prices internationally.
It's not the first time this has happened. History shows the same pattern again and again. In 1973, an oil embargo by Arab members of the OPEC oil cartel on nations supporting Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War caused prices to shoot dramatically higher. The result was the first of a series of oil crises that wreaked global economic havoc. Inflation surged, economies stagnated, the world plunged into recession. The Iranian Revolution, which began in 1978 and ended in early 1979 with the fall of the ruling Shah, sparked a second oil shock. The subsequent turmoil in Iran caused the global supply of crude oil to decline significantly, triggering shortages and a surge in panic buying. Within 12 months, oil prices surged by some 165%.
This scenario where you're seeing an existential fight by the Iranian regime is the kind of doomsday energy market scenario that has been war-gamed since the 1970s, when we had the Iranian Revolution and the Arab oil embargo creating oil price shocks.
The 2008 oil shock saw prices surge to a record high of nearly $150 per barrel in July, before crashing to around $40 by December. Now, this was unusual. The price hike was driven by intense demand and limited supply, rather than typical supply disruptions. The volatility made the global financial crisis that year even worse, having a severe impact on consumer spending and automotive industries. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 caused energy prices to spike again. The war led to sanctions on Russian energy, significantly impacting global oil and natural gas supplies and causing severe supply disruption, driving inflation around the world. The $100 per barrel level is important both psychologically and economically. When the oil price crosses it, energy costs start to squeeze the entire economy. Fuel becomes a large share of household spending. Businesses have to deal with much higher operating costs. and central banks get anxious about inflation.
So a stable oil environment, which encourages investments but is relatively affordable by the international community, is seen to be in the $60 to $80 a barrel range. Now we're well outside of that range. And the market can withstand that for a short period of time, but if it's prolonged, it will start to have inflationary impacts, not just at the bowser when one goes to fill up your car, but it filters through to nearly every other part of the economy, and that's going to put upward pressure on inflation globally.
So why do stock markets fall? Well, stock markets fall after an oil shock because oil is the fuel of the economy. When its prices spike, corporate profits shrink as companies pay more for raw materials, transportation and energy. To control inflation, central banks may increase interest rates to cool things down. This makes borrowing more expensive and slows investment. It also makes bonds more attractive relative to stocks, taking money out of equities. After spending more at the gas pump, consumers have less left over for anything else. So if people have to spend more money on fuel, they cut back on restaurants and travel and retail. That's a triple threat to corporate profits, and markets price it in fast. Also, we shouldn't rule out the fear factor. Oil shocks have preceded some of the worst recessions in modern history, as we've already mentioned, in 1973, 1979 and 1990. Investors know that history and they don't wait around to see if things will be different this time. Sell first and ask questions later. We've seen the war in Iran send shockwaves through global oil supply, and experts and policymakers are genuinely alarmed. A prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz could have consequences even worse than the crises following the 1973 Yom Kippur War or the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Both of those shocks triggered recessions across the Western world, so the stakes are high. That said, today's economies are better equipped to absorb the impact. The US and other major economies are far less oil dependent than they were 50 years ago. Energy efficiency has improved dramatically, and services now dominate many advanced economies in place of heavy manufacturing. Central banks are also more experienced at anchoring inflation expectations, which makes runaway inflationary spirals less likely than they once were. The situation is very serious, but we're not in 1973 anymore.